In my last interview, I discussed the latest Torah Codes that I received from Professor Rips and Rabbi Glazerson that concerned what appeared to be an assassination attempt on his life. This was a very unusual thing to get such a table from Professor Rips. He doesn't make predictions using the codes, but this table came up with a p-value of 2 million to 1, and so he was concerned. I received a table from him that had D. Trump next to it, a vertical line of text that said, "Name of his assassin." We then emailed each other about the idea of searching within that same line of text to see if any names came up. Professor Rips wanted a little time to use a new piece of software to search this area for names. While all of this was going on, Rabbi Glazerson happened to be in town, and the two of us also examined the table, looking for clues. Glazerson had to leave town shortly afterwards, and back in Israel he sent me a table that had a date, December 5th, or the month Kislev, the Hebrew calendar, which also fell on the same day of the 5th, rather unusual. Both Professor Rips and Rabbi Glazerson were concerned that something might happen to President-elect Trump. Years ago, there was another table that seemed to predict a terror attack in Tel Aviv, and after praying about it at the Western Wall, Professor Daniel Michelson and Professor Rips worked on that table and discovered that the terrorists would be arrested. That indeed happened. So these Trump tables were causing concern. Glazerson asked if I would contact President-elect Trump and get him this warning. I told him that I didn't personally know Donald Trump and didn't know how to get an email to him. He believed that perhaps we could go through Jared Kushner, Donald's son-in-law, who married Ivanka. Through a connection in New York, I was sent Jared's email address. It's common knowledge that Jared is an Orthodox believer. I composed the most rational letter on the subject that I knew how to write, knowing that I was sending it to someone who already had a knowledge about the Torah. The tables about Trump and Cyrus were at the beginning of my letter, and later on I included both the Rips tables and Glazerson's tables with the threat of murder. At the risk of sounding like some conspiracy theorist, I sent the note saying that all of this was found in a 3,329-year-old text. December 5th has now come and gone, and nothing we know of happened, fortunately. The table did say a threat, which could have meant that there may have been attempts and threats that the Donald may have gotten, but the public wouldn't be informed of. We don't know. However, we do know that the Torah Codes often reflect what is happening at the time, and during this whole process, there was graffiti being scrawled onto walls saying, "Kill Trump," and also "Kill Trump supporters." None of these things were known at the time to Rips when he did the tables. So again, the Torah Codes are filled with both actual facts as well as the zeitgeist of the times. We don't always know or can tell the difference, but it seems to me it's better to err on the side of possibilities than to ignore what the codes are saying completely. Often we're surprised by these tables since the information they impart is often like a reflection of actual world news.
Science, the supernatural, biblical prophecy, global events that threaten to rattle the very foundation of human existence. Critical examination of the most important issues facing today's modern world. Welcome to the Sharpening Report.
So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Sharpening Report, and I am so honored to bring to you again my good friend Richard Shaw, who's been sharing some amazing things with me, and we were talking about his last visit and the astonishing Bible codes that he shared with us last time, and a lot of other things. How are you, Richard?
I'm good. How are you doing, James?
Fantastic. It's a beautiful Friday evening here. I was just saying Shabbat is beginning, and what a wonderful way for those who celebrate the Sabbath to kick it off.
Yeah, I've still got a couple hours before it technically hits here in Los Angeles. Well, we've been doing a lot of research on the Torah Codes, and I don't know, but a lot of people seem to be getting really interested in what's coming out of the Torah Codes right now, especially when I start getting codes from Professor Rips in Jerusalem, because that doesn't happen very often for him to do that unless he really feels like he needs to send me something. And I think I showed some of these to you before.
Absolutely astonishing.
They are really amazing. And maybe what I should do is kind of explain a little bit about what the codes are once again, because some people still don't know why I'm even interested in it and why I think it's valid. Back in, the search for a code in the Torah has been going on literally for the past 1,000 years. And there was a rabbi that found a code hundreds of years ago that helped them figure out. It was a 44-letter skip code that gave him clues to mathematically calculating the moon's orbit, which they needed to grow their crops, that kind of thing. Right. And it wasn't until the 60s that NASA had computers good enough to get it a couple more decimal places. I mean, so that was found on the Torah Codes. And the interesting thing is that you go, well, people write and say terrible things in the comment section on YouTube. And I'd like to address that real quick. People say, oh, you're deceived, this is satanic, this is, like divination, it's numerology, it's like it's evil, and it's really not. I mean, I didn't put the codes in the Torah.
Exactly.
We're just trying to find them. They're basically there already. And
right.
They're in the Bible, then I think you got to really be careful saying things like that, because it's basically you're kind of showing your own ignorance.
Yeah, true.
I hate to say that, but it's true. And so what I was trying to explain is that back in the 50s, there was this rabbi named Michael Dov Weissmandel, who was this mathematician, a really excellent guy. I mean, he even worked on cracking the Enigma code, from what I've heard.
Oh.
So this guy was an astonishingly good mathematician, and he was a Jew. And so his family was all killed in Auschwitz. And so after the war in the early 50s, he moved to New York. He died I think it was 1957. So this body of work he did was very brief. It was like maybe 6-7 years at the most. But he had always thought that there was a code in the Torah ever since he was a teenager. And he finally came across this idea, well, maybe if I skip so many letters, something will happen. So he starts on the first letter, Tet, in the book of Genesis. And of course, in the Hebrew text, you have to count backwards. And I'm not an expert in Hebrew. I'm not saying that I am. I'm a filmmaker. You have to excuse me, my throat's a little messed up today. But this has always intrigued me, and I kind of fell into this group of rabbis from the most unorthodox thing that happened. And that's another story, but I had never anticipated getting to know these guys. And so when I learned about Weissmandel, that he started all this by counting with his finger. So with the first letter Tet in Hebrew, he skipped every 50 letters, and in the book of Genesis, it spelled the word Torah. So then, well, I'll try that in the book of Exodus, he's thinking, and see what happens. He does the same thing in the book of Exodus. Counting with his finger, it spells Torah. So it's happened now twice. That's an enormous clue, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely.
So then he tries it again in the book of Leviticus, and come to find out it doesn't work. So he goes, oh, well, maybe Leviticus, is the book of the law. Maybe it has something else. So he looked for, he might have looked for the word Hashem, but I think he ended up finding the word Yahweh. every 7 letters in the book of Leviticus.
Wow.
So then he went back to numbers. So you got Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus. So you got Torah, God, and now we got to go to Leviticus. Numbers. So he tries the 50-letter skip again in the book of Numbers, and he gets the word Torah again, but spelled backwards. We're just like, what? So then he tries it again in the book of Deuteronomy, and the 50-letter skip didn't work. So he goes, oh, yeah, that's right. Moses wrote the book of Deuteronomy, so he doesn't get the perfect number 50. Now, you have to understand, these rabbis put a lot of significance on numbers. They just do. I mean, they know what each number means and why it's shaped the way it is, and that 50 is like the number of God, it's like the perfect number. Well, Moses doesn't get that, so he knocked off one digit and made it 49 letters and counted 49 letters and got the word Torah again in Deuteronomy backwards. So you got Torah,
Backwards
Torah,
twice.
God, Torah. Now I got a little graphic here. I'll switch screens just so you can see this. Now, the only reason I'm doing this, James, is because it seems like a ridiculous notion to be involved in this stuff unless you have a good reason. And can you see my graphic here?
Yes. I'm so glad you got that. Can you shrink it a little bit at the bottom?
Or you want me to raise it a little bit?
Yeah, there you go. Perfect. Right there.
Okay.
That's perfect.
Okay. Basically, you got Torah, Yahweh, backwards Torah. So it's like the word Torah is reflecting to this Torah book, which is Yahweh. So you have 50-letter skip, 7-letter skip, 50-letter, and 49 letters.
Wow.
Now, that's just counting with your finger.
I'm so glad you brought this graphic up. If I could put this in, because this is what's astonishing to me. You tell me what you think, but you were sharing this last time. But I'm seeing visually, there are some people who say, and I follow this too, that if you look geographically from Jerusalem, the direction of the writing of the general people points towards Jerusalem, just like the spelling of these words. If they're writing from left to right or right to left, if you go east or west of Jerusalem, do you see what I'm saying? It's astonishing. It mirrors this very much so. Same pattern.
This is like equidistant letter sequencing, it's called. And then there's another form called gematria, and they're different. But this is just in the Torah. I mean, it's in there, and no computer necessary.
It's like everything points to God. Even geographically, our writing, in America, our writing points to Jerusalem, going from left to right. If you're looking at a map, so that's just a parallel I was saying. It's amazing.
Yeah,
and the seven distance on the letter. For God is also very significant. Even I can see that, and I'm no rabbi.
Yeah, it's like a perfect number. What's interesting is the rabbis are really interesting because this year is 5777 in the Hebrew calendar. They're like the year of completion.
Yeah,
they're all looking for Messiah this year. It's not 2017 for us yet, but it's already 2017 for them. It's just, I don't know, it's just
right. The people that you were talking about that say, oh, this is you're trying to do fortune telling or something like that, they absolutely do not get it. It's just taking it for what it is astonishing enough.
Yeah. So the whole process died for a few years because there was no way to really continue doing this. Here, I'll go back to normal screen here. There was no way to do this because it was too time consuming. Now, he had some interns that was working with him, and they were sitting there counting, and he has a book he's put out. I don't know if it's still available or not. But now we get into the whole idea of End to Darkness, which is the name of my film. Back in 1976, there was this rabbi that Professor Rips knew. The rabbi's name was Yaniv. And Rabbi Yaniv told Professor Rips about this code. Excuse me. And so Professor Rips got the book of Weiss Mendel's findings and started to realize, we could write a computer program to search this. Now, this was like, you're probably not nearly old enough to remember what it was like in 1976, but that's when computers were just coming out. And when I was in my 20s, I would go to the music store and there'd be this Apple II computer with green screen with little flickering characters, and it had like a 4-track music sequencer playing on the screen. And it was like you could control your MIDI instruments through an Apple II. And, it was like really, really tweaky. It was like little numbers would kind of form on the screen. And I thought, well, I don't want to do that. That's just too weird. It's just like I'd be a total computer geek. I couldn't even enjoy making the music. A couple of years later, they came out with the Macintosh. It was a whole different experience. It actually, little notes popped up on the screen as you're playing them on the keyboard. It was like magical, okay? So things happened really quick.
Yeah.
So Professor Rips got with 2 other guys. One was Doron Witztum and Joab Rosenberg. Now, these were mathematicians and software programmers, and the 3 of them hammered out a piece of software that would run on an Apple II, because that's all they could get their hands on. Well, back in those days, there was another computer called a Commodore 64.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah, it had like little cartridges you'd put into it that would have just a tiny bit of RAM, and each one had a program. So if you wanted to figure out, your mortgage rate, there would be like a little plug-in module you'd stick. I mean, they didn't have like downloadable software applications back then. They were like plug-in modules, kind of like synthesizers in those days, where like you'd want a bunch of new patches, they were called, and Roland would have this little box, and you'd plug it into your keyboard, and bam, you have like other 32 new patches. Yeah, cutting edge. It was like a little, ROM chip that would go in there. Yeah. Well, that's the way the computers were, except for the Apple IIs. They could load some of it into its internal memory. I don't know how much memory it had. I would guess less than or equal to 128K of RAM, most likely in those days, which is like nothing.
Sounds crazy, doesn't it?
Yeah. Now you just sneeze.
You could fit all that and more on your cell phone.
Little tiny audio clip. Oh, that's like 300K. I won't even fit. So imagine how hard it would be to encode the Torah into the computer, all those letters. So they couldn't do it. Yeah. They could only put part of the book in.
Yeah.
So they did part of the book of Genesis, and just out of curiosity, they tried some of this stuff, and it actually worked. And I asked Professor Rips once when we were at Haralick's house, I said, so what was the first code that you found? Because he confided in me. He said at one point, I thought I was going crazy looking for this because it just seemed kooky,
right.
Like, what am I doing this for? And he's really a genius.
This is the kind of, even if you're a genius, this is the kind of thing you need colleagues brought in just to keep you grounded, like you're saying this too, right?
I know it's really, it's very fascinating. Once you get into it, it's like, wow, what else is really in there?
Yeah.
And no one really understands. People write and they'll say, can you look my name up in the codes? It's like, well, Yeah, it might take 3 weeks of work to do that. No one gets that.
You know,
So please don't ask me to do that.
when you consider the author of the book, I was just listening to a Chuck Missler, something he said that ties right into this. You know, consider the author. He is outside of time, but yet
Yes.
this is for us. So he is able to demonstrate and put his authenticity forward in that he's the author. I mean, to let you know this is him. You know, he had to. This is the whole purpose of it. I think is just so we will believe. That's it's simple as that. That's how I view it, very simply.
Yeah, I think there was something going on Mount Sinai that was really interesting, very fascinating with God and his associates, let's
I
say.
totally agree.
And they were, he'd say, do a blah, 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 blah. And he's giving him instructions on what to do. And, oh, give this to Moses. He's going to need that. And do this and do that. And they would just hammer this stuff out.
Yeah.
Because the angels have this ability to do things that we don't. I mean, they can transform matter into energy. And I mean, because the stuff we read in scriptures, they just appear, they pass through walls, they paralyze people, they just kind of walk out of a building.
Yeah.
No big deal, right? Moses comes off the mountain, his face is glowing so bright no one can look at him. Okay,
Right.
something is
The
happening.
people were actually afraid
Yeah.
of Moses. I mean, afraid.
Yeah, and it must have been a trip. It would have been just totally cool to have had that experience. So I think that a lot of the Torah, most likely, in my opinion, was encoded by command of the Lord, but by his angels. Now, would we say, if we saw those beings today, would we call them aliens? Maybe so.
That's
Maybe
another whole episode
Yeah,
I hope we
yeah.
can do.
I mean, we have to understand that we don't know jack squat about
Right.
the universe, about the beings that are there, about the physical world versus the spiritual world, about reality as we know it is like incredibly limited. Apparently, there's a physical world and a spiritual world, and these things, are intertwined, but one hides the other.
And it's
And
amazing
someday-
how science is converging now in an area that they're not familiar with. They're fumbling for
Yes.
words. They're to express what they're finding to the public. They're coming up with these theatric, artistic displays and dances and things when they're really just saying, "Look, we're encountering the spiritual here." That's
That's-
how I see it.
That's true. I mean, I think that there's a very fine line between the spiritual world and technical technology. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not using that as a cop out to say God didn't do this, it's all some computer. However, God can do whatever he feels like doing, use any kind of technology that makes life easier, right? And this was, I mean, I've seen this happen clear back to where the whole UFO experience to me is real. There are thousands of them flying all over the world, being
Absolutely.
photographed every day, and people don't talk about it. Yet we go to see movies about aliens, and we don't think
Yeah.
anything weird about that. Oh, it's just a movie. Well, where do you get these ideas from? I mean, there's like, this is a real thing.
And
This is-
ladies and gentlemen, I suggest that many of us do not see them because we're not looking for them. We're not. When I became aware of when I was a kid, I believed in it. I put it aside as nonsense for a good while, and then as an adult, I came back to it
right.
through scriptural things, and I'm like, wait a minute. And I started looking up. And let me tell you, I've seen them since then. I've seen UFOs, and I've been around long enough to know what a satellite is, what a shooting star is. There are some things that are just not, I don't know if it was man-made or not, but there are some things that are just not airplanes or helicopters, and so
Well,
on and
that's
so forth.
right.
But
I mean,
you start looking
I-
up, you'll be surprised what you see.
I had this experience once, and this goes back to another project that I've worked on called Watchers. and I wanted to go out and just shoot some B-roll, so I'd have some cool, interesting footage. So I have a Corvette, so I have it fixed up with a camera package, so I can drive down the road and all this. This was like in, what year was it? 2013, I guess it was. And my wife asked me, she said, "What do you want to do on Daddy's Day?" It was Father's Day. I said, "I want to go shoot B-roll for watchers." And she goes, "Oh, great." So she humored me and went with me. So we drove all the way to Point Mugu, which is on the coast, on Pacific Coast Highway here in California.
What a great
And it's a really cool road. I mean, it's the same road that you see if you ever watch an Iron Man movie and he's got his Audi and they're like racing up the coast. It's that same piece of road there. I've traveled on it many times. There's this big giant rock along the side of the road. So I've got like a Hero Cam suction cup to the car in various places, and I'm making several passes, so I have different shots for B-roll, because I never know when I'm going to need stuff like that. I get home and I look at it, and there's this little flickering bright thing in the sky, and as the car was gradually turning on the road, there's like small curves in that area of PCH, this thing stayed in the sky. I mean, it didn't go away. And because first thing I thought of, Hero Cams have these clear plastic cases the camera goes inside of, and I thought, oh, it's some kind of internal reflection or something. I'm trying to explain it away. Well, it wasn't, because I had the camera clipped on the fender to show the wheel turning, and I could see this thing up in the sky. And then I stuck the camera on the hood and was driving down the street, and the thing was in the same spot with the camera positioned in a different place, and I never saw it while I was recording this. Never could see it. So I'm going, what the heck? I mean, what is this? So then, as I usually do when I'm trying to analyze this kind of material, I'll take it into, I have a program called Adobe After Effects, which most people that do compositing know what that is. And I can take video into that and blow it up really big. And of course I'm going to lose resolution, but I'm dealing with HD footage, so it's not bad when I'm starting out with it. But I blew it way up, and there were like two little lights side by side oscillating and throwing out sparks like that.
Wow,
physical
are you kidding?
Sparks. I mean, I could see these little flicks of light flying out of it.
Yeah.
Now I'm going, okay, that's definitely a UFO. It doesn't look like a helicopter. There's no prop. There's no wings. It was totally stationary. It was two lights going back and forth. We've seen this type of thing in other cities, in the sky. And then I realized, why is it I couldn't see it? Because I would have noticed that.
Oh, yeah.
And so then I realized, well, maybe the Hero Cam is recording in a spectrum of light that my eye can't see. So I have this remote to my HD monitor I use for editing. It's a Sony remote. And I don't know if... oh, look at that.
Yeah.
See that?
Yeah.
Now I'm showing you this on... I have a Mac... it's like a cinema display. It's called a Thunderbolt monitor. Now, that means that I've never tried this before. This is interesting.
Yeah.
That means that you're seeing this infrared beam. So
Right.
this little camera in the Apple monitor that I'm using, where you're seeing my image,
Yeah.
can pick that up, right? So that's what the Hero Cam was doing. It was showing me that there was something in, most likely, the infrared spectrum
Yes.
that I couldn't see otherwise.
I've had some friends who work in science, and they have assured me that is something that they do. They look in the infrared spectrum, specifically for these things, for UFOs. Just to be honest, and I'm speaking scientists who this is something that's an interest to many of them, but they can't really state it publicly.
Right, I'm just trying to get my
Yeah.
monitor to work again here.
Let's just say I've had professional confirmation that you are onto something. That so much of what we don't see is in the ultra or infrared spectrum, and you have to wonder what we do see. Is it just they're just letting us see. Maybe they want us to see at these
Well,
other times. Who knows?
but what's interesting, if you there, everything's back up, and I apologize for the delay, but at least I got to show you what I'm trying to demonstrate
Yeah,
here.
that's a good demonstration.
There are clips on YouTube that are fake, of fake UFOs,
Absolutely.
and then there are clips that are real. Now, there's this guy that saw UFOs at night using basically infrared cameras, and you could see them flying information over the town. I mean, they were like little triangular shaped craft, and you could see like lights going behind them and all of that. But why am I saying all this? Because to me, all these things work together. They're all about the same thing. The Torah Codes, phenomena, natural phenomena occurring in the skies that we can't explain, stuff that just disappears as you're watching it. There's stuff going on that is currently unexplainable. And now we think that these beings are interdimensional. And why am I going into this? Because in the book of Acts, there is a comment. Remember Stephan, he was being stoned because he angered, at that time, it was the Jewish elites at the time, and they stoned him. But one of the things he said, which was very telling, was that the Torah was given to you by angels, and yet you don't follow it. Now, when I read that, I'm going, okay, that's really huge. And then in the book of Enoch, I was reading that, and apparently the entire Torah was given to Moses verbally, and while he was there, he remembered everything. Now, I've heard this before, and I've heard it from people that have had near-death experiences. They're in this other realm, all of a sudden they know everything. Everything, they don't need nothing explained to them at all. They just get it. It comes back to their memory, or it's just they just know. Okay, they don't have to have anything explained to them. As soon as they leave and come back, it's like, duh, what happened? You know, it's like that.
Yeah.
And one guy,
I've heard that also.
Dr. Jeffrey Long, is a friend of mine. He's done an enormous study in near-death experiences, and he has like 4,000 stories on his website of people who have had these experiences. And one of the guys he said, you know, he gets up there and you get all of this eternal knowledge, let's say, of the way everything works, and you come back and you forget it all. And he said, why is that? And he said, because I just was given an ocean of knowledge that won't fit into the thimble that's my brain.
Exactly.
But eventually we will have that knowledge and can do all of these things.
And that reminds me of the scripture, my cup runneth over. I think the writer may have meant a lot of things, but I know just emotionally, I just want to say when I had an experience with the Lord, emotionally I just felt this love. And it was so great because he wouldn't stop sharing it out, pouring it out, like literally pouring it into me, like I'm a vessel, a cup, to the point where I'm like, wait, I can't hold all this. I don't know how to explain it in terms, but sorry, I just had to throw that in there. My cup runneth over. That just came to me while you were sharing that.
Yeah, so I took probably too long to unfold all this, but to me, I think that all this stuff is real.
Yeah.
It's not real to us yet because we're still working with a thimble for a brain.
Exactly.
But someday we'll understand it, and then, you know, the codes will become, oh, well, of course, you know, it's almost like time is nonlinear, and this material was encoded. There's times I wonder if it's being continuously encoded.
Well,
And that gets into some other things, but
the findings are that our entire universe is digital. Digitally based, and that's led some people to say, well, this whole thing is just a hologram, and certain things like that. But when you think about it, who gave us the knowledge for technology and things like that? Well, I mean, we've read the book of Enoch. There's some forbidden stuff, but this was stuff that was hijacked by these guys from the Lord.
Right.
And misappropriated. So if you go back to the original source, it's actually God who has the original technology and things like that. In a lot of things that we see is misappropriated. Um,
Right.
but people find it hard to think that that God, who created everything, put the stars in the sky, would not have something that's more sophisticated than our best computers or things that we use in the heavenlies. That just sounds ridiculous when you really think about it.
No, I don't think it sounds ridiculous. I just realized that we're we're kind of running out of time, and
Okay,
people are probably
sure.
going to want to see this stuff, and I can just go through it real quick. But Professor Rips is the guy who is pretty much responsible for moving the technology of the Torah Codes forward.
Yes.
He did these tables, which I've shown before, but which I think are really interesting. And then I have a couple new ones. This one here says Hillary. This is Hillary right here. If you can you see my cursor?
Yeah.
Right here.
Yep.
Right there. That's the word is Hillary. Now in the plain text behind her name, those three letters right there have a skip of 1, which means they're not encoded. That's the Bible. The word foundation appears, and the encoded word Hillary falls right over that word foundation. It's phenomenal.
Pierces
And
it
then-
right through the middle.
Right here, really corrupted. That's what this line of green and red letters says, with the same skip. Now, if you count, I mean, there's like 1, 2, 3. See, the same number of rows are between each letter. So this whole sentence has the same skip, and the skip is 136. Now, the way that you can figure this out, Hillary, her name was only 34 skip, every 34 letters. Now, if it says minus 34, if you can see my cursor here, James, that means it comes up backwards. Minus 136 means it's backwards. 1 means there's no skip. It's just in the Bible.
Right. Gotcha.
And this is what Professor Rips found. So then this one, which I think I showed you last time, but it bears repeating. Hillary comes up in this table every 2 letters backwards. This is the word Hillary backwards right here. Right here, every 513 letters forwards. Comey covers up. That's right here. Comey covers up. Comey is the head of the FBI. And then this is really quite amazing. Right here, the brown letters, the same skip, 513 and 513 for the male is right there. The chance of this happening in vertical rows and lined up together are huge. The p-value for this is enormous. And then you've got this, which to me is the most profound of all, because that's servers making use by their foundation. Now all of those letters are overlapping and intertwined and all in this one row. All of that data is right there.
That's incredible.
So
What book was this found in?
I believe this was in Deuteronomy, if I remember right.
Interesting. That's just absolutely astonishing.
What happened later, about 7 months ago, and I should have straightened this one out so it's centered a little better, but this one here is one that my good friend Rabbi Glazerson discovered.
Take it over to the left just a little bit, please.
This way?
A little bit more. A little bit more. There you go. Now we can see everything.
Will that work?
Yeah. There you go.
All right. This word here, Donald. So the the yellow letters that are stretched apart here, that's the word Donald.
Yeah.
Trump is the red. President is these blue letters here. I couldn't, sometimes it's hard to fit the English in there. Cyrus comes right up there. United States crosses all of this, and then no one's going to know what this means. Chesvan, that is the Hebrew month for our November.
Wow.
Now,
Interesting.
the 7th of Chesvan is the 8th of November in the Gregorian calendar. So the 7th of Chesvan is really November 8th.
That's outstanding, man.
I just thought that was amazing. Now, so here we're talking about Cyrus. Now, Cyrus was this king who helped rebuild the temple
Yeah.
for Israel, right?
The good old Babylonian king.
He was a friend of Israel, and he did all these nice things for Israel. Well,
he made an entry into our Old Testament too, didn't he?
yeah, you know, I'm going to have to read. I just haven't had time to read the whole book of Ezra. It's really short. It's just I've been really busy. No one can believe how busy I've been lately, but I have something here that you've got to see this.
Cyrus ended up penning, writing a little bit of our Old Testament.
Check this out. Now, this is where we're talking about Cyrus, but this happened before some of the things. It goes into this whole the descendants were, you know, a typical genealogy thing, and who was in Israel at the time, and family records and all that stuff. So these searched. Can you read this? I'll raise it a little more. These searched. This is the book of Ezra, chapter 2, verse 62. These searched for their family records, but they could not find them, and so were excluded from the priesthood as unclean. Then verse 63 says, the governor ordered them not to eat any of the most sacred food until there was a priest ministering with the Urim and Thummim. Now, no one knows what that means anymore, and they don't tell you about it in church unless you're going to synagogue. And this is where Christians have lost some of this really cool stuff that's actually in our Bibles, but is not taught. The Urim and the Thummim, the Jews call it the perfect lights. It's basically what energized the ephod to display colors and those stones and answer questions posed by the high priest. And here they're using it for this really simple thing, just to try to find these Israelis' identity. I mean, when I read that, I'm going, oh, you're joking. I mean, that's like, it was like normal. Oh, go to the high priest and he'll, you know, get a word from God for you on this breastplate that he's got, the Urim and Thummim. I mean, that's incredible.
We could use those today, I tell you.
So here the parallel, the weirdness about all of this is that the parallel is that's what we're doing right now with the Torah Codes, trying to get information, and we're comparing Trump to Cyrus using the Torah Codes from the Torah.
That's very confirming from the Lord.
That's just really incredible. So
yeah.
Now, Professor Rip sent me this, but he was really, really nervous for me to show it, and I sent him a letter last night at 4 a.m. because Glazerson didn't want me to show it because it worried Professor Rips. And I said, don't be worried, because this is not news that nobody knows about at this point. Basically, he did this table. It says D. Trump, the name of the assassin. Down here will raise president. Trump basically will be president, but there's this threat, which Glazerson puts in his table too, the threat of assassination. But what really was interesting with this is that the p-value to this table was 1 in 2 million, that it would be statistically significant. But I sent, because he was so worried about showing this, well, this isn't going to make someone assassinate Trump, because we've already got stuff like this going out. Can you see this okay?
Yeah.
Trump?
Yeah.
This is already coming out. And then we've got, here's another one. Trump, kill your local Trump I don't know, supporter. I think that's what it says over there. It's graffiti. Kill your local Trump supporter. I mean, this is like,
Yeah.
I have never
I saw a guy
seen
on the
anything.
news getting jumped coming out of the polls. I mean, just
And
horrible.
there's this, at the Trump hotel, rape millennia. I mean, this is like vile and awful, and the mainstream
Yeah.
media won't report on it, and the Democrats won't mention it, and they should be ashamed that they're allowing this to go on. Dump Trump, kill Trump. I mean, I'm disgusted by this. This is what our Democratic Party has devolved into, and they're not speaking out about it, and they're not doing anything about it. I think it's shameful.
Yeah.
And then here's another one. I mean, Hillary for president, and this girl is standing on an American flag. It's
Uh,
like there's something dreadfully wrong with this whole party. But then Glazerson, because he had heard about Hillary being sick, did this table to see if there was anything in the Torah codes about Hillary being sick. And it says Hillary sick, and it's one of those sentences using the same ELS with infection, lungs, in 776. It's 2016. It's this year.
yeah.
And in the plain text, it just says the woman. So it basically it even confirms that it's a woman that's sick, and lungs is actually in the plain text, and the woman is in the plain text, and all this is in the codes floating over the whole thing. I mean, it's amazing. And then you look at this.
I'm not a Hillary supporter, but and so I would not wish illness on anyone. But I'm convinced, like a lot of people, that she's basically what I would call a Trojan horse candidate, just just to get someone else in
Well, she's the
on her
most
ticket.
famous woman in the world, and also one of the most corrupt. I mean,
Yeah.
the more that you study about the whole Hillary situation, the more shocking it became when you get
Oh,
all the
absolutely.
WikiLeaks and all of that stuff. So that's why she didn't win the election, is
Yeah.
because of all of those issues. And then we have the Torah codes basically pointing out that, here we have Donald Trump, lover of Israel in the U.S., will be elected to the U.S. in
Yeah.
5777. That's the year that he, became president. Chess fan, November 8th. In the second month, now the second month is chess fan, because they had just recently had a new year in our month of it was October 2nd when the Hebrew calendar flipped to 5777. And then this basically says all of that. And this is Rabbi Glazerson that came up with this table. And it's more fun when he's here to
Yeah.
comment too. He's back in Israel today, so
Yeah. I find that strangely comforting. Maybe I shouldn't even use the word strangely, but it is. I trust the Lord to show Himself and to establish His will, and so I guess that's how we're going to have to. We're supposed to entrust our nation to the Lord from the beginning, not particularly a man. If he's working through a man, then He will accomplish what He set forward to do. So
well, that's right. And I always show this because it's so amazing. This was one that Glazerson found last year in 2015. It says right here, Netanyahu was also running for office. Will be elected. BB, Benjamin
yeah,
Netanyahu, on the 26th of Adar, which is March the 17th in our calendar, will be elected. Now, this came out on February 9, before the election, about 5 weeks before. And so I'm hearing all the mainstream media say, well, it's a really close race. Benjamin Netanyahu may not make it this time. We don't think he's going to win. But I had this table that I knew Glazerson had done, And we're not going to use these like a crystal ball because we're not supposed to do that. And we could be wrong. We could be looking up the wrong stuff or the wrong use, the wrong set of words or something. But in this case, it was true. Every single aspect on here was correct. Now I don't know what to say about that other than I'm constantly interested in this because stuff happens that I can't explain.
God shows his sovereignty. I mean, he's sovereign, and it's his book, his words, his Torah.
It is. So, anyway, that's it. I don't know if people ever have questions that watch your show that I'd be happy to answer during the show. What happens is if people start writing in after the show, I get deluged with emails.
Right.
Right stuff. Can you look my name up in the Torah? And they don't realize what goes into that. I mean, it's a big job doing that because this isn't Google, it's just like
right.
The Torah. So, first of all, you have to know what your name is in Hebrew, and there has to be some identifying factors go with your name. Otherwise, there could be a million other people with the same name as you have.
Exactly.
So yeah, we could look up your name, but we don't know it's you.
Right. So it's not just, you have to probably look up other terms that identify it as you, and if you find these things correlating in the same sort of cross-section, then that would be more something that likely may be relevant and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, it takes a lot of work.
Yeah, I mean, so I always go back to when I was on Coast to Coast, and George Nori asked us to look up his name. And
oh, wow, yeah.
And because some guy called in at like 10 till 2 in the morning with a question, could the Torah Codes be the book of life? And I had asked Glazerson about that a couple years earlier because I thought it was. How ironic if the Torah holds all of the names of the people who are in the book of life. They're already encoded in there.
It would not surprise me.
No, it wouldn't me either. It's kind of like a joke on us.
Yeah, I mean,
we're carrying it around all the time, and
this is from the same person who knows how many hairs are on every single person's head ever created.
Well, exactly. So how hard would it be? In fact, Glazerson thinks everybody that's ever lived, including some even think like animals and everything, are all encoded in the Torah. There could be billions of combinations in the codes, layers of stuff in there. I mean, I just don't know the whole depth of it, and we'll never know. It's just incredibly, it's just wild.
Yeah, I kind of think one day we will know, but just not now. Now we just know enough to know that this is the product of God. I mean, this is actually this Torah is from a genuine author who lives outside of time and is communicating with us constantly.
Right.
He can see the beginning from the end, and he has it all laid out right here. And it's just the timing, the discovery of these things right as they are timely also is another factor that I think is very indicative of who it is.
Yep.
I'm about to, following you, I'm about to speak with Ken Johnson, who he's presenting the book of Gad, which was mentioned in the Bible, but it's been missing from history. It was found with a little tribe or a little village of Jewish people sort of living secludedly, who had this book all this time, and he's sort of and it's like the timing that this comes forward just when we need it.
Apocryphal book.
Yeah, I think it was mentioned in Chronicles, the book of in the Bible, the book of Gad. But
so it's a New Testament book, or is it older?
It was mentioned in Chronicles, so it's an Old Testament book, or actually I should say it was referenced from the book of Chronicles.
Oh, not Corinthians, but Chronicles. So we're still
Chronicles.
talking, yeah.
Yeah, it mentions something and says, isn't it mentioned in the book of Gad, the seer? But my whole point is that all these things that we see, someone is orchestrating it at this time together, in unison, more and more, increasingly so. That in itself is the hugest sign.
Well,
that he has
yeah, and
God.
also we're all of a sudden these books are becoming available for free online. You can go, oh, I wonder what the Book of Enoch says, and you can just look it
Yeah.
up online and read it. Go, oh, that's interesting. I
When
never
my
read that.
dad, if my dad, for instance, he was born in the early 1900s, had he had an interest, he would not have been able to get a hold of it unless he went to Ethiopia,
Right.
and he wouldn't have known to do that. The
Well,
times
I used
certainly
to
are
hate
changing.
going to libraries because you had like this index card thing that I could never figure out, and it took me more time to look up something, and then I'd go, here it is, and I'd go get the book, and the book's not there. Someone's checked it out. It's like it was just stupid and just moronic, and
Yeah.
it took all the fun of learning out
Oh
because
my gosh.
you ended up having to do all of this crap before you could actually get down to the material that you wanted to study. And now it's like, if I can't get it on, Google search in like less than 2 seconds, I'm like getting impatient. you know?
I've been researching Nephilim since, for about 20 years, but I didn't have the internet until maybe 12 years ago, or actually 10, personally. So you can imagine, and at that point when it became available, internet, I hadn't thought of it right away. Hey, go look online. I'm still thinking library, and you know how painstaking that is. So that's
Oh,
why
it's ridiculous.
it's just amazing. I think this is all. Tell me what you think, that this is all part of the. Remember the last part of the book of Daniel, where it says, all these things,
And we'll be rushing to and fro, and knowledge
Exactly.
shall be increased.
exactly.
And we're rushing, and we know more because we have access to knowledge at a speed which is just unbelievable.
Knowledge will
compared-
be increased.
They just increased our internet speed here to, on a good day, it's like 115 megabits a second.
Wow.
I mean, I can get download speeds that are incredible. Upload is like maybe 12 megabits, which isn't as fast. I wish it was the same both directions because I have
Yeah.
to upload big video files. But just being able to download stuff that quickly, before you'd go, oh, it's a gig and a half. That's going to take all night. Now it's just like, zzz, it's done.
And this is such incredible stuff. Thank you for coming back and keeping us abreast of these things and on top of it. Also, you touched on it. I'll be looking at extra dimensional UFOs. Did a little something with Josh Peck a long time ago, just helping him out with when he was looking at morphing or extra dimensional properties of UFOs, and I'm going to be revisiting that subject a little bit. And I don't know if you have an interest in it whatsoever. You're more than welcome to come and holler at me about it.
Oh, sure. And let me share screen one more time here really quick.
So that really ties into what you were talking about
Yeah,
earlier.
it's from the movie Pi. The
Okay,
symbol Pi, which came out in '98, I think it was.
I remember that vaguely.
Yeah,
now,
it's this
now
guy
I'll have
that
to go look at that.
he was looking for the number of God, and he kept doing stuff, and it was driving him insane. And he had this thing in his head where he could do mental math
Yeah.
incredibly well. But that's like what's interesting. Guess how long that little clip is that we just saw? It's 3 minutes and 14 seconds, 3.14.
Oh wow, was that intentional? Who did that?
I don't know who posted that. It's
There's
just-
this phrase people use. I've always heard the devil's in the details. Actually, I'm finding the inverse. So I don't really like that phrase anymore.
no, I
I'm
mean,
finding God in the
these
details.
things are combined. The Torah is a book of numbers. It's not demonic.
Yeah,
It's designed that way.
absolutely.
We just
God
don't
has
understand
encoded
it.
everything. This universe is encoded. It's
It is.
digital coding, and more. So that only fits the pattern. It only fits.
Exactly.
Or maybe everything else fits Torah if you really want to look at it right.
No, exactly. I mean, thanks, James, for having me on today. I really appreciate it. I mean, they want to know more about this, they can go to our website, endtodarkness.com, and rent or buy a copy of the film. That helps us when we do that. And 10% of all the proceeds goes to the rabbis for more Torah Code study. And there's also we're trying to update their software, and we're trying to raise 50 grand to do that. And there's a little click box if you go there, and if you have a little extra money and you want to donate to helping them write new software, there's a place to do that. I don't get any of that money. That's for them.
Outstanding. I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to contributing myself, actually. I'm being honest. So I hope, please, I urge people who've enjoyed this video, please consider doing that and going to Richard's website. And I will post a link for that here as well.
Well, thanks, man. I sure appreciate it.
Thank you too,
And always
Richard.
have fun with you doing this. And
Absolutely.
say hi to everybody else there for me.
Me too, brother. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us on the Sharpening Report.
Coming of Messiah, בתשע"ו, in 776.
In the past 6 months, all of you that are working on Torah Codes have sent me some incredible tables, all pointing towards Messiah, and all of you seem to be working on that topic more than anything else right now. And can you please read these individual lines to us and explain what that means?
Now the most important point is that next year is after sabbatical.
Yes.
According to our tradition, the time of Messiah coming is after sabbatical. Malchut David לעולם ועד. The kingdom of David לעולם ועד, to the eternal world.
The kingdom of David will what?
Will be לעולם ועד.
The world.
For eternal. It will for eternal world. It will be eternal.
Eternal.
Yeah. So in Hebrew, these are two words. שובו אליי ואשוב עליכם. Come back to me, then I will come back to you. This is why the numbers don't have the 5 here, because it's self-understood. When you speak about Messiah, you relate to 5,000 and because 6 million, you see? This was the
Is that a Kabbalistic thing, or is that Midrash?
I say, even a matter, Kabbalistic. It is not more Kabbalistic, says.
Okay.
The Ari, the Vilna Gaon, like the Vilna Gaon says that all the indication to our history in the 6 millennia is in the book of Deuteronomy.
Deuteronomy.
Because Deuteronomy, even it is the 5th book, but we believe that the book of Genesis is divided into 2 parts. So basically the Deuteronomy is really like a 6th book.
Okay.
So therefore, a lot of indications of what is going to be in the world and what really happened, you find in the book of Deuteronomy. Because in the 6th millennium.